The rain on Port Talvis never stopped. It hammered against the rusted metal streets, turned the market squares into shallow rivers, and made everything smell like wet copper and regret. Marcus Webb stood under the flickering awning of a noodle stall, watching the water cascade off the edges and sheets. His cargo hauler, the Drifter's Chance, sat 3 docks over, and he should have been aboard already, prepping for the jump to Helion Station. Instead, he was here, stalling, because going back to that empty ship felt heavier than usual tonight. He was 36 years old and felt twice that. His jacket was patched in 4 places, his boots were developing a hole near the left toe, and his last contract had paid barely enough to cover fuel. The universe had a way of grinding people down, and Marcus had long ago stopped fighting it. He just drifted now, port to port, job to job, trying not to think too hard about the choices that had brought him here. The noodle vendor, a 3-armed Quellen with kind eyes, slid a bowl across the counter. "You look like death, human." "Feel like it too," Marcus muttered, paying with the last of his credits. The broth was thin. The vegetables were questionable, but it was warm. That counted for something. He ate slowly, watching the street. Port Talvis was the kind of place where people came to disappear. No central government, no real law beyond what the dockmasters enforced, and enough traffic that you could lose yourself in the crowd. Marcus had been doing exactly that for 3 years now, ever since the incident on Corvus Prime. Since everything fell apart, he pushed the thought away and finished his noodles. The walk back to the docks took him through the industrial district, where the buildings leaned together like trunks, and the alleyways were deep enough to hide anything. He kept his head down, one hand near the plasma cutter on his belt. Not that he was looking for trouble, but trouble had a way of finding people regardless. He was halfway across the loading plaza when he noticed something wrong with his ship dot. The cargo bay door was cracked open. Just slightly, maybe 6 inches, but he always sealed it. Always. Marcus's pulse quickened. Pirates were common here, and the Drifter's Chance wasn't much to look at, but she was his. Everything he owned was on that ship dot. He approached carefully, drawing the plasma cutter. The rain masked his footsteps. When he reached the door, he listened first. Nothing. Then, slowly, he pulled it open. The cargo bay was dark, except for the emergency lighting strips along the floor. Crates were stacked exactly where he'd left them, tarps secured, nothing obviously disturbed. But there was something, a feeling. The air was different, warmer, like someone had been breathing in the enclosed space. "I know you're in here," Marcus called out, his voice steady. "Come out now, and we can talk. Stay hidden, and I'll assume you're hostile." Silence. Then, from behind a stack of supply crates near the back wall, a soft sound. Not quite a gasp, not quite a sob. Something scared. Marcus moved closer, cutter raised. "Last chance, please." The word was barely a whisper, accented strangely, shaped by a throat not quite human. "Please, we mean no harm." He rounded the crates and stopped dead. 2 girls sat huddled together on the floor, pressed into the corner like they were trying to disappear into the metal itself. They were definitely not human. Their skin had a faint silvery sheen that caught the light in odd ways, and their eyes were too large, too luminous. The older one, maybe 16 by human standards, had her arms wrapped protectively around the younger, whose face was buried in her sister's shoulder. They were soaked through, shivering, and looked like they hadn't eaten in days. Their clothes were torn and stained with something dark that might have been blood. The older girl's eyes met his, wide with terror and desperate hope in equal measure. "We hide," she said, her voice breaking. "We hide or they find us. Please, please, we go anywhere. Just not back." Marcus stared at them, his mind racing. Stowaways were bad news. If port security found them on his ship, He'd lose his license, maybe worse. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to march them right back out into the rain and forget he ever saw them. But something in those silver eyes stopped him. He'd seen fear before, plenty of times. This was different. This was the kind of fear that came from watching something terrible happen, the kind that carved itself into your bones and never left. "Who's looking for you?" he asked quietly, lowering the plasma cutter. The older girl flinched at the question. Her arms tightened around her sister. "Bad people, hunters. We cannot go back. They will kill us." "Why?" She hesitated, then slowly reached into her tattered shirt and pulled out a pendant. Even in the dim light, it was clearly valuable. Some kind of crystalline metal, worked with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when Marcus looked at them directly. It pulsed with a faint inner light, like a heartbeat made visible. "Because of what we are," she whispered. "Because we survived when we should have died." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. That pendant looked old, ceremonial. The kind of thing that belonged in a museum or a palace. And if these girls were running from hunters with something like that, they weren't just random refugees. They were something important. Something valuable. Something dangerous. The smart thing would be to walk away. He sighed and holstered the plasma cutter. "What are your names?" he asked instead. The older girl blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "I am Nira," she said slowly. "This is Kes, my sister." "She does not speak." "Not since," her voice broke. "Not since they came." Marcus crouched down to their level, keeping his movements slow and unthreatening. Up close, he could see the exhaustion etched into Nira's face, the way her hands trembled even as she tried to appear strong. Kes hadn't looked up once, her face still buried against her sister's shoulder. "I'm Marcus," he said. "This is my ship. You've put me in a complicated situation. I know." Nira's voice was barely audible. "I am sorry. We had nowhere else. The ship was open and quiet, and we were so tired of running." "How long have you been running?" 17 days. Maybe 18. Hard to count. 17 days. These kids had been running for more than 2 weeks, probably without proper food or shelter, staying ahead of whoever was chasing them. The fact that they'd survived this long said something about their determination. Or desperation. Marcus rubbed his face, feeling the stubble rasp under his palm. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake. Every instinct honed by years of survival in the outer systems was screaming at him to cut his losses and walk away. But he kept seeing those eyes. That fear. That desperate, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would help. He'd been there once. On Corvus Prime, when everything went wrong, and Mara left him bleeding in the dirt. No one had helped him then. He'd crawled out of that hole alone, and it had cost him everything soft inside. Maybe that was why he couldn't walk away now. "Okay," he said finally. "Here's what's going to happen. You two are going to stay quiet and out of sight while I prep the ship for departure. We're leaving Port Talvis in about 2 hours. Once we're in hyperspace, you're going to tell me the whole story. Everything. Who you are, who's chasing you, and why. If I don't like what I hear, I'll drop you at the next station. Understood?" Nira stared at him like he'd just performed a miracle. "You will help us? I'm getting you off this rock. After that, we'll see." He stood up. "There's emergency rations in the locker by the door. Eat something. And stay away from the viewports." He turned to go, then paused. "And Nira? Whatever you're mixed up in, whatever that pendant means, I need you to understand something. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy trying to get by. If helping you puts me in the crosshairs of something I can't handle, I will cut you loose." "Got it?" She nodded slowly. "I understand. Thank you, Marcus Webb. You are kinder than you believe. He didn't respond to that. Couldn't. Because kindness implied he was doing this for noble reasons. And Marcus wasn't sure he remembered what those felt like anymore. He just knew he couldn't leave two terrified kids shivering in his cargo bay. Thought maybe that was enough. Rain hammered against the hull as he climbed to the cockpit. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the port. Marcus began the pre-flight sequence, his hands moving through familiar motions, while his mind spun with questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. 2 alien girls with a mysterious pendant, running from hunters for 17 days. This was going to be a problem. He could feel it in his bones, but for the first time in 3 years, that cold, empty feeling in his chest had been replaced by something else, something that felt almost like purpose. The drifter's chant shuddered as it broke through Port Talvis's atmosphere, rain streaming off the viewports in horizontal sheets. Marcus kept his hands steady on the controls, guiding the old hauler through the turbulence with practiced ease. Behind him, in the cargo bay, 2 alien girls waited in silence. He could feel the weight of their presence, heavy as gravity, the moment they cleared the atmosphere and the stars spread out before them. Marcus felt something in his chest unclench. Space was honest. No hidden alleys, no watchers in the shadows. Just the void and whatever you brought with you. He engaged the autopilot and sat back, rubbing his temples. The hyperspace coordinates to Helion Station were already plotted, but he wasn't ready to jump yet. First, he needed answers. Marcus descended the ladder to the cargo bay. Nira and Kess had moved from their hiding spot and were sitting on a supply crate, sharing an emergency ration bar between them. The younger girl, Kess, looked up as he approached, her luminous eyes tracking his movement with an alertness that seemed too old for her age. "We're clear of the port," Marcus said, leaning against the bulkhead. "Now it's time for that conversation." Nira swallowed her mouthful of food and nodded. She looked better already, some color returning to her silver-toned skin. Up close, without the shadows and rain, Marcus could see details he'd missed before. The elegant bone structure of her face, the way her hair fell in dark waves that shimmered with hints of deep blue. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way that made his chest tighten uncomfortably. He pushed the feeling aside. This was business. "Start with the basics," he said. "What are you?" "Velasian," Nira answered. "From the outer reach territories. Our people have lived there for 3,000 years. Marcus knew of Velasia, a cluster of moons in the Kepler sector, known for their isolationist policies and ancient culture. Rich in rare minerals, politically neutral. Not the kind of place that usually produced refugees. And the pendant? Nira's hand instinctively went to her chest, where the crystalline object hung beneath her shirt. "It belonged to our mother. It is a royal seal, proof of bloodline." The cold feeling in Marcus's stomach intensified. "Royal, as in you're princesses or something." "We were," Nira said quietly. "Before the coup." Kess made a small sound, pressing closer to her sister. Nira wrapped an arm around her, and Marcus saw the girl's shoulders shaking. Still not speaking, but the trauma was written in every line of her small body. "Tell me what happened," Marcus said, his voice gentler now. Nira took a breath. 3 weeks ago, there was a celebration. The Festival of Stars, our most important holiday. The palace was full of people, music, light. Our parents were on the royal balcony, greeting the crowd. Her voice wavered. Then the bomb started. Marcus said nothing, letting her continue at her own pace. It was planned perfectly. Multiple explosions, all at once. The palace guards turned on us. They were bought. We learned later. Our father died in the first blast. Our mother, Nira's eyes glistened. She got us to the escape tunnels, made us promise to run, to survive. She gave me the seal and told us never to come back until it was safe. She stayed behind, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Nira nodded. She held them off while we ran. We heard the weapons fire as we escaped. We heard her screaming for us to go faster. A tear rolled down her silver cheek. We heard when it stopped. Kes buried her face in her sister's shoulder, her whole body trembling. Marcus felt something crack in the walls he'd built around himself. These weren't just stowaways or refugees. They were children who'd watched their world burn. Who's behind the coup? Our uncle, Tovin. Nira spat the name like poison. Our father's brother. He always wanted the throne, always believed he deserved it more. But Velasian law is clear: the crown passes to the eldest child, not the eldest male. Our mother was the true heir, and we are her daughters. So he killed everyone to take it, everyone he could find. But we escaped, and as long as we live, his claim is contested. That pendant proves our bloodline. It responds only to direct royal descendants. Without it, he can pretend we never existed. With it, she looked at Marcus directly. With it, we are a threat to everything he has built. Marcus processed this information, his mind already working through the implications. 2 legitimate heirs to a throne, on the run, being hunted by the new ruler. The bounty on their heads must be astronomical. As if reading his thoughts, Nira said, I know what you are thinking. How much we are worth. How easy it would be to turn us in. The thought crossed my mind, Marcus admitted. No point in lying. I understand. We have nothing to offer you except danger and trouble. If you want to leave us at the next station, I will not blame you. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held that desperate hope again. But please, wherever you leave us, let it be somewhere with other people. Somewhere public. It will buy us a little time before the hunters find us. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. 16 years old, maybe 17. Should have been worrying about school or friends or first loves. Instead, she was negotiating for her life and her sister's, trying to sound brave while everything inside her was breaking. He thought of himself at that age, full of dreams, believing the universe was fair if you just worked hard enough. It had taken years to beat that optimism out of him. How much is the bounty? He asked. Nira flinched. 2 million credits. Each. Alive, only Tovin wants to make an example of us. 4 million credits. That was enough to buy a new ship, pay off every debt, set himself up for life. Marcus could feel the temptation like a physical weight. 4 million credits would solve every problem he had except the one where he'd have to look at himself in the mirror every morning. Hell, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. You girls really know how to complicate a guy's life. I am sorry, Nira whispered. Don't be. I made the choice to help when I found you. He pushed off the bulkhead. But we need to be smart about this. Those hunters you mentioned, what kind are we talking about? Mercenaries? Government agents? Both. Tovin hired Yarrick Voss and his crew. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Yarrick Voss? You're sure? You know him? I know of him. Everyone in the outer systems knew of Yarrick Voss. He was a legend among mercenaries, and not the good kind. Ruthless, efficient, and expensive. If Tovin could afford Voss, he was serious about finding these girls. Voss doesn't give up, ever. If he's on your trail, he'll follow you to the edge of the galaxy. Then we are already dead, Nira said flatly. Not necessarily. Marcus's mind was racing now, slipping into the tactical thinking he'd thought he left behind on Corvus Prime. Voss is good, but he's not omniscient. We have advantages. He doesn't know you're on my ship. Port Talvis has thousands of ships passing through daily. He can't track them all. If we're careful, we can disappear. For how long? long enough to figure out a plan. Nira studied him with those two large eyes. Why are you helping us? Really? It was a fair question. Marcus wasn't sure he had a good answer. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe because I've been where you are. Not exactly, but close enough. 3 years ago, I trusted the wrong person. She sold me out, and I lost everything: my ship, my crew, my reputation. Had to rebuild from nothing. He met Nira's gaze. No one helped me when I needed it. Everyone just walked past, protecting themselves. I survived anyway, but it left marks. So you help us because you wish someone had helped you? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of being the guy who walks past. Something shifted in Nira's expression. The fear was still there, but underneath it, Marcus saw something else. Warmth, gratitude, and something that made his pulse quicken in a way he didn't want to examine too closely. You are a good man. Marcus Webb, she said softly. I'm really not. You are. You just forgot for a while. Before Marcus could respond, the proximity alarm blared. He was moving before his conscious mind caught up, racing to the cockpit with Nira right behind him. The sensors showed a ship dropping out of hyperspace directly in their path. A sleek hunter-killer class vessel, military grade. That's not possible, Marcus muttered, pulling up the identification tags. No one knew we were here. No one could have tracked us that fast. Unless someone had planted a tracker on the girls before they reached Port Talvis. Unless Voss was better than Marcus thought. The cum crackled to life. Unidentified cargo vessel, this is the Razor Wind. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Marcus's hands flew across the controls. Hold on. What are you doing? Nira asked, her voice tight with fear. Something stupid. He fired the main thrusters, throwing the drifter's chance into a tight spiral, just as weapons fire lanced through the space they'd occupied a moment before. The old hauler groaned in protest, but she held together. Marcus angled toward a nearby asteroid field, praying the Razor Wind wouldn't follow. She did. They are gaining on us, Nira said, gripping the co-pilot's seat. I know. Marcus pushed the engines harder, weaving between asteroids. The drifter's chance wasn't built for this kind of maneuvering, but years of tight docking and desperate escapes had taught him how to push her limits. Another volley of fire. Closer this time. One of the shots clipped their port stabilizer, sending alarms screaming through the cockpit. Marcus compensated, but he knew they were running out of options. The Razor Wind was faster, better armed, and purpose-built for pursuit. They weren't going to outrun her. There, Nira said suddenly, pointing. That asteroid, the large one with the crater. Marcus saw it. A massive rock, maybe 2 kilometers across, with a crater deep enough to hide in. It was a desperate play, but desperate was all they had. He killed the engines and let momentum carry them into the crater, using the emergency thrusters to slow their descent. The drifter's chance settled into the shadows, and Marcus shut down everything except life support. Complete radio silence, no heat signature, nothing. They waited in the darkness. Through the viewport, they could see the Razor Wind sweeping past, her searchlights probing the asteroid field. Marcus held his breath, every muscle tense. Beside him, Nira was completely still, her hand gripping the armrest so hard her knuckles had gone white. The hunter-killer made another pass, then another. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes, she changed course and moved on. Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. They'll be back. This just bought us time. How did they find us so fast? Good question. Marcus pulled up the ship's diagnostic systems, running a deep scan. It took 3 minutes, but there it was, a micro-tracker attached to the underside of the cargo bay door. Sophisticated, nearly invisible to standard scans. Someone tagged us on Port Talvis, he said grimly, which means they know what ship you're on now. Nira's face fell. Then we have doomed you. I am so sorry. Not doomed yet. Marcus was already plotting their next move. But we can't go to Helion Station. Too obvious. We need somewhere unexpected, somewhere with good information networks and minimal law enforcement. Where? Marcus smiled without humor. I know a place. You're not going to like it. Will we be safe there? Safe is relative. But we'll have options. He started bringing the ship's systems back online. Get your sister and strap in. We're jumping to hyperspace the moment we clear this field. Nira stood and hesitated. Marcus? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on us. She left before he could respond, disappearing down the ladder. Marcus sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the stars scattered across the viewport like diamonds on black velvet. 4 million credits. A normal life. Safety. All he had to do was turn around. Instead, he engaged the hyperdrive and plotted a course for Meridian Station, a lawless hub on the edge of civilized space, where smugglers and criminals traded in the shadows and questions weren't. Asked if you had the credits to pay for silence. It was the last place anyone would expect him to take 2 royal heirs, which made it exactly the right choice. As the stars stretched into lines and the drifters chance leaped into hyperspace, Marcus allowed himself a moment of brutal honesty. He wasn't doing this just because it was right. He wasn't doing it just because he'd been in their position once. He was doing it because when Nira looked at him with those luminous eyes and called him a good man, something in his chest had sparked back to life. Something he thought had died on Corvus Prime with his old life. Hope. And maybe, just maybe, something more complicated than that. Something that terrified him more than Yarrick Wolf ever could.